Was quite an introduction. Yeah. My name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic, and by the grace of a loving God, I've been continuously sober since June the 15th of 1986. And for that date, I'm truly, truly grateful. And I try to express my gratitude to my Creator through service to his kids. And sometimes I do a good job of that. Sometimes I don't. A lot of friends on here. Jason in over in New Zealand, who we spent time with last summer, and Louisa in Belfast, who we spent time with in September. And so good to see you guys and know you're on here. And Erica from Santa Fe, I had no idea she was going to be on here. And I see Jimmy there, and who's I consider a dear friend, and Marty, and just there too many to mention. But at any rate, I was just thinking about this. I was sponsored by a really wonderful man named Don Pritz, and he sponsored me for 8 years until he died. And one of the things he said towards the end of his time was that one of the problems in AA that we have is we have too many speakers and not enough storytellers. And I've been doing this for 30 years, and I'm still not a speaker. I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. So, somebody said, you don't want to get too slick at this. And believe me, I haven't. So that's all there is to it. Anyway, so how long do I have to speak, Ali? I'm going to time myself.
It's 35 minutes, brother. We'll give you a 5-minute on the screen.
Okay. All right. I can get carried away, so I better watch that. So this came to me. Well, first of all, real quick, I didn't get to AA on the wings of glory. I was kind of I guess you'd call me a low bottom alcoholic, because I was nearly dead when I got here. But I wasn't that kind of a suave, sophisticated, charming alcoholic. I was more of the dangerously antisocial variety, and just was, in my cups. Bill Wilson said an alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. I didn't do unlovely. I was just a fallen down, tongue chewing, babbling idiot of a drunk when I was in my cups. More than unlovely, I did knee crawl and snot slinging. That's kind of, you get the picture. And I never thought I'd get sober. I had tried and tried. I'd fought the booze for years, and I tried to get sober, and it was just out of the question, and I gave up trying. And what I did do is I ran away from home, because a lot of people were looking for me in 1986. And I ran down to the big city of Albuquerque, and I'm a Santa Fe drunk too. That's where I did most of my drinking. Did some pretty nasty drinking in New York City, but that's a whole other story. But at any rate, so I ran down there to get into a treatment center, because that would give me some time out and give me some distance from these people that wanted to find me. I owed money to people. That basically was what it was. And I'd been stealing from my business partner. I had 4 children who were terrified of me, and a wife that hated me. And that's not a throwaway line. Juanita nearly drowned me in the bathtub when I was passed out there right before I got sober. I didn't know about it until I got sober, and she told me, but that's not a loving relationship, y'all, So anyway, and we have an extremely loving relationship today, and we've been married we've been together 46 years, been married 45. So, that's a testament to AA and Al-Anon and the power of God. At any rate, so a little AA meeting found me down there in Albuquerque that was allowed to hold their meeting at the treatment center. They were called Dawn Patrol. They were named after an old Errol Flynn movie, actually. And there's still a meeting. They're a big meeting now down in Albuquerque, and they're a real AA meeting. They really do it. And I'll be forever in their debt. In fact, the 2 guys that 12-stepped me, the second one died a year ago, October, and the other one died about 3 weeks ago. And I'll be forever in their debt. And there are a lot of other people who are in their debt that don't even know they are, you know, because this thing has been passed down to other people. At any rate, so they kind of lit me up. I tell you, the reason that they lit me up was that they were such down and outers. I mean, they were as gnarly as an alcoholic can get. And they were telling these stories in front of strangers. And I just, you know, I couldn't believe it. And it was just incredible entertainment, really. I'd gone out there to their meeting to get real coffee with caffeine in it because they were serving decaf in the hospital. And I stayed for the stories, you know. And then eventually I asked these guys, I said, you know, I don't have time to give you the whole background, but one of the things that bothered me about AA in Santa Fe was it was just too white. It was too goddamn white, you know. I went to these meetings and I looked around, there were no brown faces. And, you know, it bothered me a lot. You know, I said, you know, where's the raza? Where's the skins? You know, the raza is the Chicanos and the skins are the natives. And there were none of them at the 2 meetings that I went to. So I assumed that they just didn't go. Now I'm married to a Chicana and, you know, I hang out with Chicanos. I work construction with them. I play softball with them. I drink and shoot dope with them. And, you know, it's like that. And I had an alter ego that I was half Chicano, which we call Coyote. And I speak Spanish, and in the summer, if I'm working construction outside, I get dark, and people say, "Well, you're Coyote, right? You know, half Anglo, half Hispanic." And I'd go, "Yes, I'm Coyote." You know, it's total bullshit. I'm a white boy from Kentucky, but you know, anyway, I had this alter ego going. So I get down to this meeting in Albuquerque, and there's these 2 gnarly Chicano guys, and they kind of swoop me up. And I listened to them. They had cred, you know, and so I listened to them. Anyway, to cut to the chase, I asked them at one point, I said, you know, how do cats like you stay sober, man? I mean, I've heard your stories. It is remarkable that you're even alive, like it is that I'm alive. And they both told me the same thing, and they told me independently of each other. They both said, we pray to God in the morning, and we ask God to keep us sober. And at night, if we are sober, we thank God for our sobriety. And they put a lot of emphasis on that, thanking God at night. And I thought, my God, I feel sorry for you. You know, I mean, it's just, that's absurd. That's just a fairy tale. You know, it's ridiculous, you know. And, but they were sober, and they kept coming back, and they were there at 6:45 every morning, you know, 7 days a week. And so something was going on. But I thought, you know, you pray to your fairy tale God if that turns you on. But, you know, I know better. I'm a realist, you know. And then one morning, James, this guy who just died 3 weeks ago, he said, you know, my ex-wife let me take my 2 daughters to the state fair. And I heard that, and my heart broke, because I didn't have the wherewithal to take my kids to the state fair. You know, there wasn't enough money to drive my kids 60 miles down to Albuquerque to the state fair, but this guy could. And, you know, the guy that I was feeling sorry for because he prayed to the fairy tale God. And so what I decided was that they had psyched themselves into this somehow, and, you know, done a psych job on themselves, and it had helped them to stay sober. And so, you know, I thought, well, maybe I can psych myself into it, you know, just do some kind of a con job on myself. And so I started saying this prayer at night: God, thank you for my sobriety, kind of sarcastic in the beginning, you know. And about the 4th night that I did that, you know, I felt a kind of some kind of a comfort, some kind of a warmth come around me. And I liked the feeling, you know. And I thought, what the hell do I have to lose? I mean, you know, praying to the fairy tale God. I mean, can't get any worse. I'm a walking dead guy anyway. So I kept that up every night. And then I got out of that place. I was 33 days in that place. And the only thing that I could see different was that every night I'd said, thank you, God, for my sobriety. So I kept that up for quite a while. You know, a guy just got in touch with me from Nashville, Tennessee, where I am. We split our time between Nashville and Santa Fe now. And he's coming up 5 years, and he said, I tried to do this without any steps, but I hit a wall and I really need help. I haven't drank, but man, I'm close to it. And I knew exactly where he was coming from, because that was basically my deal. I kept saying that prayer at night, and I did pray, from time to time. I prayed quite a bit, but the steps seemed inconvenient to me. Well, I would do them, but I do them my own way, kind of an as Tom sees it sort of a program. And in 5 years, it got gnarly. And I met a guy who said, he called me an untreated alcoholic. And I wanted to punch him because I've been to so many, I've been to literally thousands of AA meetings. And it's like, how could I be untreated? I've been in AA doing all this stuff. I've been a GSR, for God's sakes, And anyway, he said, well, you never took the medicine that we're offering. You never submitted to the process that's outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I realized that was the case. And what happened was he directed me to this. This was 1992. And that summer of 93 was going to be this Fellowship the Spirit conference in Breckenridge, Colorado. And he suggested that I go to it. And I said, well, why would I do that? I've never heard of that. And he said, well, it's the Cannes Film Festival of people who do the work from the Big Book. And that turned me on, the Cannes Film Festival, that's cool. So anyway, I went up to this place in June or July of 1993, and I was 6 years sober, and I heard things that I'd never heard before. And I met people that were going to a depth that I hadn't run into in AA up until that time. One of the big deals was the ninth step. They really emphasized finishing all your amends. And also that you couldn't do that without the power of God, which is what I eventually realized, So at any rate, I jumped on board, and I just started doing the same stuff they were doing. And I met these incredible people, Clint Hodges. There was a guy from Oklahoma, Earl Husband, who was a fourth step guy, and Don P. and Gary B. And actually Sharon was the first female speaker at the very first FOTS. It blew me away, absolutely. And what I got turned on to was that there is a depth of this thing that, if you're willing, that you can go really, really deep, So that's what I've been doing for these last, I was 6. So the last 31 years, I've been a dedicated Big Book step worker, and it's paid some incredible dividends for me. And there's not time to go into all of that, but I do want to talk about why I picked this. So, when I got to AA, I called myself an atheist, but the truth is I was never an atheist. I took way too much LSD to be an atheist. That was just impossible. But, I knew something was going on, right? But the idea of, like Bill Wilson, the czar of the heavens, or Santa Claus or something like that, that didn't appeal to me. I mean, and what I've discovered over these years, and the only way I've stayed sober, I want to throw this out. I'm going to be in West Texas at a convention in El Paso this weekend. And Juanita and I, from 1987 on, went out to West Texas a lot. And you'd hear these old time West Texas types, these cowboys, and they'd go, well, I hadn't found it necessary to take a drink since 1955, and that sounded really cool. But thinking back on that, the miracle of my life is I found it extremely necessary to take a drink many times in my sobriety. I mean, almost critical, One time I was headed to the liquor store, praying to God to get me to the liquor store before my mind just drove me absolutely insane. And I was having a panic attack. And the miracle is I wasn't allowed to take that drink, so I don't say that. I don't say that I haven't found it necessary. The miracle is that I haven't taken the drink at any rate. So what have I found in all these years? And depending on this power, one of the things is that it didn't matter what you called, what your conception was. You know, the guy that died 3 weeks ago, his name was James Tenorio, and he looked at me in one of these meetings back in '86 in the treatment center, and he pointed a finger and he said, "You need to find a higher power you can do business with." Okay. And that sounded cool, but I didn't understand what it meant. But what he was saying was the same thing that Evie said to Bill. Bill, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And an interesting fact, I think it's a fun fact, is that the book never says concept, although you'll hear that in AA meetings. The book always talks about conception, and a conception is malleable and can grow and change as it should, as it should. So I have prayed over the years to every conception of God conceivable. I've prayed with almost every, religion known to mankind. Last weekend, I was in a sweat lodge, a Lakota sweat lodge, praying to Tokashla, great-grandfather. I was raised by a Protestant mother who dissed Catholics like you can't believe. Of course, I married a Catholic just to show her up. But I've prayed to the Blessed Mother. I have prayed to the Divine Mother of the people in East India, the Hindus pray to that aspect of God. I have prayed to the Father of Light that Bill Wilson quotes, and he borrowed that from the book of James. I love that conception, and any conception that I need really fits. And the reason for that is because in the book it said God was either everything or nothing. What was our choice to be? I chose everything, and it's worked out really well for me. So before I totally run out of time, this is a thing in our lineage that on page 45 it says lack of power was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? And then on page 55, it answers that question, and I'll show you how. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, bad stuff happening, by pomp, being all pumped up about yourself, by worship of other things. Man, don't we know that one? But in some form or other, it is there. For faith in a power, capital P, greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of a God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly. Okay, that's how. But he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. And this is the most bold statement in the entire big book, in my opinion, okay? We found the great reality, capital G, capital R, deep down within us. In the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found. It was so with us. And I always think of Chuck C saying, what you're looking for, you're looking with, So the story behind this, and I think it's a good story. How much time do I have, Allie? Like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, something like
15.
That. You have 15.
Wow. Good Lord. Well, I'll finish early then. No, don't believe that. So in 2013, a guy called me. I was in Philadelphia at my son's house. I remember this like it was yesterday. And he's a guy I know from Northern California. And he said, listen, he said, would you think of doing a workshop with me? Now, I've been doing these workshops since '03, like big book step workshops, usually with my wife. And I thought he meant something like that. And I said, sure, yeah, I would do that. His name is J.R.H. is his name. And he lives in Pollock Pines, California. And he said, well, he goes, it's a traditions workshop, and it's in Moscow, Russia. And immediately I balked, because I wanted to go a lot of places. I wanted to go to Indonesia to my buddy Danny's dive resort, but Russia was not on my bucket list, man, at all. And I said, well, I know a lot of guys. I know Gary Pluckstall, and I know some other people really good with the traditions, and I think they might do a better job than me. And he said, well, they didn't ask them, they're asking you. And I go, okay. I said, well, let me call my sponsor because I thought I could get out of it. So I called Gary, and Gary B, who's my sponsor, lives in Indianapolis. And he goes, you're going to Russia. And I go, son of it. Anyway, so I call JR back, and I said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And he said, well, the Russians got in touch with me. They think May would be better time than January, which had been the original, time we were supposed to be in Moscow. I said, thank you, God, Anyway, it was a trip of a lifetime. And of course, I'll never go back. I don't think they'll let us back in, but it was really something. And part of it that was so special for me was that my sponsor, Don, had brought the first legal AA to Russia in 1988. And so I'd been hearing these stories for years about his trip to Russia. And so anyway, we go to Moscow, and we hook up in New York, we fly to Moscow. They just had us speak as much as they possibly could, but we did a weekend-long traditions workshop, which was fabulous. And I've learned more about the traditions by trying to put on a workshop than I have, you just learn this stuff by doing it, I think. And I'm no expert with the traditions, but I'm pretty well versed in them. I can speak on any tradition. So anyway, we did this thing, and it was really well received. We had the Russians, it was an active workshop where we gave them a problem and then said, what tradition will you apply to this? And we broke them into little groups, and it was really effective, and they really liked it a lot, and they learned a lot, and we did too. Anyway, so then it was kind of on a need to know basis, like, we'll tell you where you're going tomorrow kind of thing. And so they flew us 4,800 miles to Siberia. And we end up in this one town, and we tell our stories. We spend the night at 6 a.m. A guy picks us up, drives us 8 hours along one of the largest lakes in the world, Lake Baikal, and to this one little town. It's kind of a Tibetan Buddhist town, actually. That was the religion there. And we speak to a bunch of doctors and AAs, and then they immediately throw us on this train that was supposedly a sleeper, but we didn't sleep at all. And 12 hours more, we end up in this town, Chita, where we're going to do a big book step workshop and speak as much as they could possibly get us to speak. So the very first night, we've had no sleep. And the very first night, they say, well, we're going to go to this school, and there's 6 Russian officials that want to quiz you on Alcoholics Anonymous. They want to know how AA will work in the correction system here, and they have questions about AA. And man, we were just I mean, we were just tired as could be, So we get to this school, and the 6 Russian officials are like these 6 women. They're all women, and they're like 40-ish, like maybe in their 40s and stuff like that, it seemed like. And one is a social worker, one is a warden of a prison, one's a warden of a jail. They all had government jobs, basically. So JR and I are there, and the first, and this is all through translation, right? And so the first question is, how do you think that AA will work in our correction system here in Russia? And so I knew enough to, because I'd listened to Don, to say, I don't know how it'll work. I've only been in Russia like 8 days now, and I don't have any idea. I really couldn't say. And that's always the right answer. I learned that, but it has worked very well in the United States and in other countries, that I've been privy to that. And I've done a lot of work in prisons, and I know full well that it works. In fact, 2 of my heroes got sober in prisons, Tom I and Don P. Anyway, so they kind of digested that. And then the next question was kind of the kicker of all kickers. And they said, what about this God stuff? AA seems like a religion. And you get a little bit of time with this because it's being translated. You see what I'm saying? So I could think about it a little bit. And I just went inside and I said a prayer. And what came out was this. I said, we're not a religion. And first and foremost, AA is not a religion. But we have a book, and it's kind of our book, our main textbook. And in that book, it says that deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. And so we believe that that's in us, even when we weren't aware of it. And I said, when we speak of God, I said, what we mean, as far as I can tell, is like when you see an incredibly beautiful sunset that just breaks your heart. You just can't even describe it. And that feeling that you get from that. Or you see a beautiful, beautiful flower that just, takes your breath away, the natural beauty of it. Or the love that you have for your children that's like no other love on earth, and they're kind of, it's being translated. So you get, you see what the effect was, and they're kind of getting, and I said, if you guys will look out that window, and I pointed to the right, and there was a window there with a tree right at the window. And I said, we can't see the wind. I mean, we're sitting in here, so we can't literally see the wind, but we see the leaves moving on that tree. And so we know that there is wind. There's no debating that, it's the manifestation is the moving of the leaves on the tree. And I said, we in Alcoholics Anonymous know of hundreds of thousands of people whose lives were just absolutely ruined. And they say that because they depend on this power that we can't see, we know it exists because that's the physical evidence of it. And then I said, there was years ago, I saw a documentary film on Dr. Carl Jung's, life and his all of his teachings and such. And when I said Jung, they all kind of, I got some street cred just throwing Jung's name out there. And I said, but the interesting thing in this was he was being interviewed by the BBC, and they were asking him, Dr. Jung, based on some of the things that you've said and that you've written, it would lead one to the conclusion that you, a man of science, believe in God. And what's going on with that? And Jung, he was smoking his pipe, and he takes a hit off his pipe, and he goes, you've seen it, Alex. And he says, belief in God. He goes, no, I do not believe in God. I know God, and there is a difference. And I think that encapsulates it. There's a Mark Houston line that I've always loved, and I've quoted for years, and that Mark was praying one morning, and he was a friend of mine also. And he was praying one morning, and he said, God, please show me how to tell people about you. And he went into meditation, and he heard a voice say, don't tell them about me. Tell them your experience of me. Okay. And so it's not the God of my understanding, because I certainly don't know. The book says none of us could comprehend or define that power. So we can't understand it. I don't think. I certainly can. And but I do have experience after experience with it, and that I can share all the time. Okay. So that first reading about the spiritual appendix, the unsuspected inner resource, I had zero idea that was inside me, or that I had access to it. You see what I'm saying? And man, when I walked into some of those places to make amends that I thought I would never, ever do, just too humiliating, or I might go to jail or whatever it would be. And that power manifested itself in me being able to do that. And I knew full well that I had the experience of the power of God. So that's all I've got. And I'm glad to be here. And thanks everybody for listening. And I hope that was a fun story. And it's true. Anyway, thank you.